Plunder Pit. Chapter 18, Chad's Bad Dream. When Wanda heard, she looked dismayed, but recovered quickly. "How long will it take us to get through?" she asked. "I doubt if we can do it alone," Chad said. "In any case, it will be beastly dangerous. It's a job for a professional miner." "Jan knows mines," Wanda said. "We must fetch him." "And leave the house unguarded?" Chad asked. "Major Garnet will be quite close. If anything went wrong, Rachel could fetch him. Besides, the cellar is locked and I've hidden the key." "I'll go and fetch Jan," Clive offered, and Chad agreed. Wanda got Chad to take her in to see the fall. She was horrified at the great pile of broken stuff. When she came out, she was very thoughtful. "Why did they do it, Chad? Why did they block the tunnel?" "Because they didn't want us to get in." "Then," said Wanda, "it means that there's a way through to the cellars, or at any rate, to the place where the treasure is." "It does seem like it," Chad agreed. They were still talking when Clive came back with Jan. Jan had a pick and shovel. He went into the cave and had a look at the fall. He shook his head. "Going to be terrible awkward to clear all that," he said. "It's got to be done," Chad answered, and Jan nodded. "Us will try. Now don't none of ye come too close. Us must find out if roof holds." It was wonderful to watch him as he began on the pile. He seemed to know exactly where to start and what to do. Presently he looked around. "Roof be all right. I'll pry these rocks out one by one and you can carry them out of the way." They set to it in earnest. Chad carried the big stones, Clive and Wanda the smaller ones. Wanda worked as hard as any of them. At last they broke through and Clive made a plunge forward, but Jan stopped him. "Tea time," he said, "and the master will be expecting you back. He'll be worried if you don't come. Us will go home now and come up again after." Clive got quite angry, but Jan was firm and Wanda backed him. "It's only waiting an hour or so," she said, "and anyhow we all want our tea and a wash." Clive submitted and they went out. The weather had changed again. By the time they got home it was raining so heavily that the water was running in streams down the hillside, and it was out of the question to go down the cliff in such weather. Major Garnet had come in when the rain began. He had a brace of fine sea trout, and reported that he had not seen anything suspicious all day. They told him how they had cleared the cave, and he seemed quite interested. They spent an unhappy evening. Their nerves were all on edge with the waiting and the suspense. Chad and Clive by this time were as keen as Wanda herself to find the treasure. They had both come to realize what a tremendous lot it would mean to Wanda and to her father. They tried to talk of other things, but always came back to the treasure. The first to go up was Major Garnet. He said he was tired and wanted a good night's sleep. "I'll lay he's not half as tired as we are," said Chad. "And if he'd been shifting rocks like us, he could talk." "Most likely he'd be speechless," Clive answered with a grin. "I say, Chad, it's stopped raining." "You'd like to start, I suppose," said Chad sarcastically. "I'd be game," Clive declared. Chad laughed. "You're quite crazy. Well, we'd best turn in. We'll get off early in the morning." They said good night and went up. The boys had two small rooms at the end of the passage on the north side of the house. Then came Wanda's room, with her father opposite, and Major Garnet's was one of the two rooms facing south. Chad was truly tired and was hardly in bed before he was asleep. He had a horrid dream. It was that he had gone down to the cellars and found a great hole in the floor. He was looking into it when someone came up behind, pushed him into it and slammed down a trapdoor, imprisoning him in a little dark cell where there was no air and he could not breathe. He woke from one nightmare to another. He was actually suffocating. Something, a rug or a blanket, was wrapped round his head and shoulders. A heavy weight pressed upon his body and strong hands held him down. He fought furiously, kicking and struggling with frantic energy. He tried to shout, but the blanket muffled his cries and cut off his breath, while the weight on his body made it impossible to move. His struggles became more and more feeble, and suddenly he collapsed. "He'll do now," came a gruff whisper. "Is all clear outside?" "All clear, then help me down with him. It is pretty bad to be choked till you are insensible, but it is almost worse coming to again. For one thing, it takes so much longer." Chad found himself choking and coughing and struggling desperately to get air back into his starved lungs. He was trying, too, to sit up, But this he could not do, for his hands were tied fast, and so were his ankles. As his head cleared, he began to realize that the place he lay in was pitch dark and that he was lying on cold stone. His head throbbed horribly. His throat was equally painful. By degrees the shock began to pass. His lungs worked again and blood flowed through the choked veins of his body. Memory came back, and with it recollection of how his nightmare had changed to horrible reality. He groaned in misery, and the groan brought an echo. But it was not an echo. It was another groan. He realized suddenly that he was not alone in his prison. He had a companion hidden in the blackness. It's the end of chapter 18.